Hello everyone, and welcome to Wisdom and Wealth, the channel dedicated to helping you navigate life's complexities with wisdom and build a more fulfilling future. Many of us, especially those over 40, have accumulated a lifetime of experiences. We often attribute our suffering to the obvious culprits like loss, fear, failure, or even anger. These are certainly potent sources of distress, no doubt. But what if the deepest roots of our unhappiness lie hidden, disguised within the very fabric of our daily lives, within desires we hardly even notice? What if the most persistent forms of suffering aren't born from what we can see, but from the subtle desires that live just beneath our conscious awareness? The desire to be seen, the craving to be right, the need to be loved, and even the wish to be enlightened, these drive so much of our behavior. If this resonates with you, be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to Wisdom and Wealth for more content exploring the deeper aspects of life. These desires aren't inherently sinful or bad. They're simply human, deeply ingrained within us. But it's precisely because they are so subtle, so seamlessly integrated into our everyday thinking, that they can bind us so tightly. Today, we'll embark on a journey into the world of these subtle desires. Our aim isn't to reject desire altogether. That's an unrealistic, even unhelpful goal. Instead, our purpose is to see them clearly, to bring to light the invisible threads that subtly tug at our minds, preventing us from resting deeply in the present moment. We'll examine how these desires manifest, how they influence our choices, and, most importantly, how we can cultivate a more mindful and balanced relationship with them. So take a deep breath, settle in, and let's begin to unravel these often unseen forces that shape our lives. Are you ready to explore this terrain? One of the most pervasive, yet often unrecognized, subtle desires is the illusion of progress, the constant craving to evolve. In our modern, fast-paced world, especially within the spiritual community, there's often an unspoken pressure to keep moving forward, to constantly heal, grow, and achieve higher states of consciousness. We diligently meditate daily, read countless spiritual teachings, and strive to be more mindful, compassionate, and awakened. On the surface, this pursuit appears undeniably noble. Who wouldn't want to be a better version of themselves? But underneath this virtuous facade, there often lies a hidden current, a subtle craving to be someone other than who we are right now. This is the illusion of spiritual progress. It's an inner thirst, not for truth itself, but for the transformation that we believe will finally bring us peace. We may find ourselves asking questions like, am I becoming more awakened yet? Am I purifying my karma fast enough? Am I transcending my ego completely? These questions may appear spiritual, but they're often driven by bhava-tanha, one of the three forms of craving the Buddha described, the craving to be something more. Bhava-tanha is essentially the thirst for becoming, the subtle, persistent desire to transform into something better, purer, or more spiritually evolved. It often cleverly masks itself as discipline and self-improvement, but at its core, it's still a form of grasping, a reaching for something beyond the present moment. In the Dharma, the teachings of the Buddha remind us that craving, even for spiritual development, is ultimately a trap. Every time we chase after some future ideal of ourselves, we subtly reject the present, the imperfect, the not yet there version of ourselves. We're essentially saying, this version of me is not enough. But true liberation doesn't lie in endlessly evolving. It lies in ending the cycle of becoming altogether. Enlightenment isn't a prize waiting at the end of a long, arduous effort. It is what remains, what naturally arises, when we finally stop running, stop striving, and rest fully in the present moment, just as we are. Remember to like this video and subscribe to Wisdom and Wealth. The heart of Buddhism is non-attachment, not only to pleasure or possessions, but also to our spiritual identities and our self-imposed goals. Even the spiritual path itself is to be abandoned, like a raft that carries you across a river but is not clung to afterward. So how do we break free from this cycle? The first step is simply recognizing it. Observe your own motivations, your own internal dialogue. Let go of the incessant desire to improve yourself. Stop measuring your spiritual journey by arbitrary milestones. Instead, sit, breathe, and simply witness, without judgment, without agenda. You may discover that the peace you're chasing has always been right here, quiet, undemanding, and patiently waiting beneath all the striving. It's a subtle but powerful shift in perspective. The focus moves from becoming to being, from chasing a future ideal to embracing the present reality. It's a letting go, a surrendering to what is, and in that surrender, a profound sense of peace and freedom can emerge. In today's hyper-connected world, visibility has become a kind of currency. We post, share, and perform, often without even realizing the extent to which we're doing it. Even in the seemingly pure realm of spiritual practice, the ego finds clever ways to seek validation, to be seen, to be recognized. Beneath many of our actions, even the most well-intentioned ones, lies a deep human longing, a quiet and persistent desire to be seen, to be acknowledged, to be appreciated. This craving can show up in the subtlest of ways. We might share a profound spiritual insight online, telling ourselves that we're hoping to inspire others, when secretly, we're craving praise for our wisdom. We might post a serene meditation photo on social media, carefully curating an image of perfect calm, seeking approval for our spiritual dedication. Or we might drop our favorite Dharma quote into a conversation, not just to share wisdom, but to be admired for knowing it. This is a form of tanha, or craving, and more specifically, the craving for mana, a Buddhist term that can be understood as conceit or ego identity. It's not necessarily blatant arrogance, but the persistent need to compare and position ourselves, even within a spiritual hierarchy. We might find ourselves subtly thinking, I'm more advanced than that person, or I'm a more dedicated practitioner. The Buddha warned against this deeply ingrained pattern. In the Sutta Nipata, he advised his disciples to practice in silence, humility, and simplicity, not for the world to applaud, but to quietly purify the mind. The most dangerous forms of craving aren't the loud, obvious ones. They're the ones we justify in the name of growth, the ones we believe are serving some higher purpose. In many Buddhist traditions, especially in Zen and Theravada, the concept of practicing in the dark is deeply revered. It's about finding solace, integrity, and solace in solitude. This means engaging in deep, authentic practice without needing to show it off or share it with others. Not because sharing is inherently wrong, but because needing to be seen inevitably distorts our intention, subtly undermining the purity of our practice. Ask yourself honestly, would I still meditate if no one knew I was doing it? Can I learn in silence without feeling the need to prove what I know? Am I okay with being invisible, if it means being truly free? Freedom arises when we stop outsourcing our worth to the approval of others, when we cease curating our identity, even our spiritual one, for the world's applause. Remember to like this video and subscribe to Wisdom and Wealth. The Dharma encourages us to turn inward, to cultivate self-awareness. Real validation doesn't come from likes, followers, or compliments. It comes from deepening presence, from cultivating quiet integrity, from knowing ourselves, imperfections and all. When you no longer need to be seen, you begin to see clearly, not your image, not your reputation, but your true nature. Silent, unshakable, and free. Have you ever felt that subtle inner tension when someone challenges your deeply held beliefs, especially spiritual ones? Perhaps it's a subtle tightening in the chest, a knee-jerk need to explain yourself, or the quiet urge to prove that you're on the right path. This is the craving to be right, and it's one of the most deeply rooted obstacles on the path to inner peace. This form of craving doesn't always appear as outright arrogance or aggression. Often, it disguises itself as conviction, clarity, or a righteous defense of truth. We may genuinely believe that we're simply sharing wisdom, but underneath that noble intention, there's often a lurking fear of being wrong, or worse, of not being seen as wise, knowledgeable, or awakened. In Buddhism, this clinging to views is related to Dithupadana, which emphasizes the danger and limiting impact of rigid beliefs. The Buddha repeatedly emphasized that attachment to fixed opinions, even spiritual ones, can become a subtle prison. In the Sabha Sutta, he warns that speculative views inevitably give rise to inner disturbance and further entanglement in suffering. And it's not just about abstract ideas, or esoteric spiritual concepts. It's about our identity, our very sense of self. We often unconsciously tie our self-worth to our knowledge and beliefs, constructing elaborate narratives like, I follow the true Dharma, or I understand mindfulness better than most, or my spiritual path is more advanced or pure. This is the egoic mind cleverly using spirituality to build a new, improved self-image, creating a carefully curated persona, the wise one, the conscious one, the awakened one. But the stronger this identity becomes, the more fiercely we resist anything that challenges it, clinging to our beliefs as if our very survival depended on them. The Dharma teaches that true liberation isn't about being correct, it's about being free from the need to be correct. Right view, as described in the Noble Eightfold Path, isn't about rigidly holding onto a set of fixed beliefs. It's about seeing reality clearly, free from ego, distortion, and attachment. And sometimes, that clarity means humbly admitting that we simply don't know, that we're still learning, that our understanding of truth is always evolving. Remember to like this video and subscribe to Wisdom and Wealth. There is a profound humility in not knowing, in releasing the need to win an argument or staunchly defend our spiritual identity. When we surrender that need, the heart softens, we become more open, more curious, and more truly alive. Ask yourself, can I listen to someone with opposing viewpoints without immediately preparing a rebuttal in my mind? Can I hold my deeply held beliefs lightly, recognizing their impermanent nature? Can I prioritize inner peace over the fleeting satisfaction of being right? In the end, true wisdom isn't about being right, it's about being real. And reality doesn't need defending, it just is. In the early stages of a spiritual journey, many practitioners experience powerful moments, fleeting glimpses of peace, profound clarity, blissful stillness, or a profound sense of unity with all of life. These moments are undeniably beautiful, offering a glimpse of the potential within us. They give us hope, they remind us of what's possible, they fuel our dedication to the path. But lurking within these experiences is a hidden danger, the subtle, yet insidious, temptation to chase them, to cling to them, to begin craving the spiritual high. This is the desire for special states of consciousness, a subtle and intoxicating form of spiritual attachment. It's not the obvious craving for worldly pleasures, but a more refined desire for elevated inner states that affirm that we're getting somewhere, spiritually. You might notice this craving manifesting in moments like wishing that your meditation today felt as peaceful as it did last week, feeling discouraged when your practice feels ordinary or flat, or compulsively comparing your current state to past insights, desperately longing to return to that blissful state. This is precisely where we can fall into a trap, getting snared by desire. The Buddha himself warned about upadana, attachment, even to the wholesome. In numerous sutras, particularly in the Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha cautioned his disciples about becoming attached to the jhanas, the deep meditative absorptions. While these states are undeniably powerful and can certainly support our path, clinging to them becomes a new form of bondage. It's still the ego at play, just wearing spiritual robes. So, what's the problem with craving spiritual highs? First, it inevitably creates aversion to the ordinary, the mundane. We begin to subtly reject boredom, discomfort, or even emotional neutrality. We start dividing our experience into good and bad, bliss equals good, restlessness equals failure. But the Dharma isn't about achieving a state of perpetual bliss. It's about awakening to the true nature of all things, even the uncomfortable and mundane. Second, it leads to identification with a false sense of progress. We might think, I felt deep stillness last night, I'm obviously advancing on the path. But then, when the mind is noisy and agitated, we assume, I'm falling behind. This reinforces the illusion of a solid, unchanging self that either moves forward or backward, which is exactly what the Buddha urged us to see through. Lastly, it can easily become a subtle form of addiction, one that we don't even recognize as such. Like a spiritual version of a drug, we begin chasing the next hit of insight, mistaking temporary states for permanent liberation. The truth is, true presence doesn't discriminate between peak experiences and the inevitable plateaus. In fact, the very heart of Buddhist meditation, vipassana, or insight meditation, is about seeing clearly, not feeling good. It's about observing whatever arises, without grasping or resisting, without judgment or preference. To overcome this, like this video and subscribe to Wisdom and Wealth. So, what's the antidote to this subtle, yet pervasive, craving? It's cultivating equanimity, that calm, even-minded awareness that treats all experiences as equal, recognizing their impermanent nature. Whether you're resting in a state of deep stillness or struggling with a restless, monkey mind, the core practice remains the same: observe, allow, and let be. There's a story of a monk who had mastered the deep meditative absorptions. He could sit in perfect stillness for hours, effortlessly experiencing states of bliss and radiant light. When he visited the Buddha, fully expecting praise and recognition, the Buddha instead said, "Even this must be let go." The monk was shocked, exclaiming, "Even the bliss of the jhanas?" The Buddha gently replied, "Even the highest states are conditioned, impermanent. What arises will eventually pass. True freedom lies beyond even bliss." The monk finally understood. He let go, not just of worldly cravings, but of spiritual pride, of attachment to his extraordinary experiences. And through that release, he finally awakened. Craving the highs blinds us to the sacredness of the ordinary, of the mundane. True presence embraces both the peak and the valley, without preference. It's not what we feel, but how we meet it, that reveals our inherent freedom. At the heart of almost every human being lies a simple, tender longing to be loved, to be seen, to be held in unconditional acceptance. This desire is so natural, so deeply human, that we rarely question it. And yet, from a Buddhist perspective, even this seemingly innocent longing can become a source of suffering when we cling to it unconsciously. This is the subtle emotional craving for love and connection. It may not be as loud or dramatic as romantic obsession or outright dependency, but it quietly shapes our thoughts, our relationships, and even our spiritual path. You might notice it in moments like these: feeling uneasy when someone you care about withdraws emotionally, subtly shaping your behavior or beliefs to maintain someone's affection, feeling incomplete or anxious when you're alone, even briefly, craving validation or closeness from a spiritual teacher or a spiritual community. This form of subtle emotional clinging is a variation of tanha, the Buddhist term for craving, and in particular, kama tanha, the desire for sensual and emotional pleasure. We seek soothing and reassurance through connection, validation, and emotional closeness, not realizing that when we become attached to these experiences, we're essentially building dependency. And dependency, even in its gentlest form, is a kind of bondage, limiting our freedom and our capacity for true inner peace. The Buddha understood this deeply. In the Kula Sutta, he described how attachment to people and feelings inevitably leads to grief, sorrow, and despair when those people or experiences inevitably change or fade. Why? Because all things, including relationships, are inherently impermanent. This doesn't mean that we must become cold or detached, suppressing our capacity for love and connection. In fact, Buddhism doesn't ask us to eliminate love, but to liberate it from need, from dependency, from self-centered clinging. In many Mahayana traditions, especially Zen and Tibetan Buddhism, the highest form of love is metta, loving kindness that is selfless, unattached, and unconditional. True metta doesn't say, "I love you because you love me back." It simply loves, radiating outward without expectation of return. But when our desire to be loved becomes a condition for our peace, when we need others to love us so we can feel okay, that's where subtle emotional clinging takes root. And with it, the seeds of potential suffering are inevitably planted. Even on the spiritual path, this desire hides itself well. We might unconsciously seek praise from our teacher in order to feel like we're on track, or we might try to impress a spiritual community so that we feel a sense of belonging. We might even fear being alone on the path, mistakenly believing that we need others to walk with us. Like this video and subscribe to Wisdom and Wealth. Yet, according to the Buddha, the highest freedom, nibbana, is a state not dependent on anyone or anything. It's not loneliness, it's spaciousness. It's the fullness that arises when nothing is missing, and no external source is needed to complete us. Now, you might reasonably ask, but isn't it natural to want connection? Aren't we wired for it? Yes, absolutely. We are fundamentally social creatures. But what Buddhism teaches is the crucial difference between loving from fullness versus loving from lack. When we love from fullness, we give freely, without strings attached. We listen without needing to be heard in return. We care without seeking to control. We enjoy the presence of others without clinging to their permanence. When we love from lack, on the other hand, we hold on tight. We fear loss. We unconsciously manipulate. We confuse affection with approval and intimacy with our self-worth. The core practice, then, isn't to eliminate love, but to purify it, to free it from need and expectation. Ask yourself, can I love without needing to be loved back? Can I rest peacefully, even when I'm not receiving affection? Can I be alone without feeling abandoned? These aren't just emotional questions. They are liberation questions. When you finally stop needing love to feel whole, you become love itself, not grasping, not performing, just radiating stillness, warmth, and freedom. This is unconditional presence. This is the love that the Dharma points toward. Among all the subtle desires that can arise on the spiritual path, there is one that often wears the most convincing disguise, the desire for enlightenment itself. At first glance, it seems undeniably noble, even essential. After all, isn't the ultimate goal of the spiritual path to awaken, to reach nirvana, to become free from suffering? Yes, and no. Because while the aspiration toward awakening is deeply encouraged in Buddhism, the craving for awakening is something very different, more subtle, more sneaky, and often almost invisible to the practitioner. It becomes just another form of tanha, craving disguised in spiritual robes. We start to believe that if I could just become enlightened, all my suffering would instantly end. Once I attain realization, I'll finally feel whole, complete, and at peace. Enlightenment will be my final, ultimate escape. But in framing awakening as a future event, a distant goal, a thing to get, we inadvertently turn the present moment into an obstacle, something to transcend or overcome. And in doing so, we inevitably fall into bhava tanha, the craving to become, to attain, to arrive at some future ideal. The Buddha saw this dynamic very clearly. In the Alagaddapama Sutta, he taught that even the very notion of a self that attains nirvana is ultimately a delusion. Awakening isn't the glorification or enhancement of the self. It's the disappearance of self-centered craving altogether. This means that enlightenment isn't something you achieve, like a trophy at the end of a race, or a badge you earn after accumulating enough meditations, insights, or retreats. It's the natural unfolding of a mind that no longer clings, that no longer grasps, that no longer strives for something beyond what is. And ironically, it most often arises when we've completely stopped chasing after it. This is the final, beautiful paradox of the spiritual path. The harder we chase awakening, the further it seems to drift away. In Zen Buddhism, there's a beautiful teaching: when you seek it, you cannot find it. This doesn't mean we should stop practicing, or abandon our aspiration for awakening. It means we shift the way we relate to the practice, moving from striving to surrender, from seeking to simply seeing. You may be meditating diligently, studying scriptures, cultivating mindfulness in every aspect of your life, and still feel like you're not getting anywhere. That sense of failure, that nagging restlessness, that feeling of stagnation, is often not a sign of your lack of progress. It's a sign that the ego is frustrated because it can't possess what cannot be possessed. Remember to like this video and subscribe to Wisdom and Wealth. Because awakening isn't something you get. It's what remains, what naturally emerges, when the illusion of you quiets down. This is why in Theravada teachings, vipassana, or insight meditation, isn't about constructing a new, improved identity. It's about deconstructing all that we habitually mistake for me and mine. We see the impermanence of thoughts, the emptiness of clinging, the selfless nature of all phenomena. And in that seeing, liberation begins. Yet many modern spiritual seekers unconsciously fall into what is sometimes called enlightenment addiction, constantly searching for the next teacher, the next retreat, the next profound shift in consciousness, mistakenly believing that one more breakthrough will finally deliver us to the finish line. This constant spiritual seeking ultimately becomes another samsaric cycle, chasing after peace while simultaneously reinforcing the fundamental belief that peace is always somewhere else, always just out of reach. The Dharma, on the other hand, teaches the exact opposite. This moment, this very breath, is the path. Not when it's calm, profound, or blissful, but exactly as it is, with all its imperfections, its anxieties, and its ordinary moments. Enlightenment isn't far away, it's not tomorrow, it's not waiting for you in some future, more advanced level of insight. It is right here, right now, but obscured by the mind's deeply ingrained habit of grasping, of craving, of always seeking something more. So, how do we work with this? We return again and again to the present moment, not in order to gain anything, but in order to lose the illusion that something is missing, that we are somehow incomplete. We meditate, not to escape from our lives, but to arrive fully in them. We practice, not to become enlightened, but to gently let go of the one who thinks it must. Ask yourself, can I walk the path without constantly imagining some distant endpoint? Can I sit in meditation without relentlessly trying to attain some special state? Can I accept that this very moment, in all its ordinariness, might already contain the freedom I seek? The greatest irony of the spiritual path is this: the more you chase awakening, the more you delay it. But when you stop running, when you sit down fully in this now, this breath, this silence, you begin to taste it, not because you finally got it, but because you finally stopped trying to. Subtle desires don't scream. They whisper. And in their whisper, they subtly bind us, keeping us trapped in cycles of craving and dissatisfaction. But the moment we see them clearly, not as enemies to be vanquished but as simply movements of mind, we begin to unbind ourselves. Allow yourself to become quiet enough, still enough, to finally hear them. And in that stillness, you may discover a freedom that's more profound than any state, more peaceful than any bliss. It doesn't come from adding more to yourself, but from seeing clearly and letting go of all that isn't truly essential. If this reflection has stirred something within you, please consider liking this video, subscribing to Wisdom and Wealth for more content, and sharing it with someone else who is walking their own path. Thank you for being here.